Welcome to another episode of Let's Chat With. Joining me is Calgary's own Gwyn Auger, aka the Magic Assistant. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So how are you dealing with the pandemic regarding your magic?
Well, there hasn't been much. I'm president of the Calgary Magic Club right now. So monthly we've been having, it's actually been great for lectures and mini lectures because since all of our meetings are over Zoom, I get to invite, people that I know or I've worked with like all over the world. So that's kind of fun. So then you never know who's going to show up and pop into our monthly Zoom meetings for the club. So for that, it's been great. But in terms of travel and actually performing, there hasn't been much. But there's been a lot of like fun different Zoom events that I've been able to do.
So what's it like being the president of the Calgary Club?
Oh, it's fun. It's great. I like to call it princess because I think I'm one of like the first female presidents that we've had in a very, very, very long time. So I like to say I'm the princess of the club.
How did you get started in magic? How long have you been performing for?
I think probably coming up on like 14 years. I don't know how long anymore. I got started from Brent Smith, who was the owner of the Vanishing Rabbit Magic Shop, which was our brick and mortar here in Calgary. Unfortunately, now I think it's only online because the pandemic, he had to move from being a store to just being online. So that's a shame, but I went into this shop one day to get a gift for a friend who was a magician. And he said, you know a lot of magicians. And I said, yeah, of course. And he said, and you're small. And I said, well, yeah, I'm pretty small. And he said, you're like the perfect size to be an assistant. He's like, have you ever thought about doing that? And I was like, no, but that sounds awesome. How do I do that? So he said, tell you what, if you can come in like the next week, and I lived really close to the shop, so it was like no big deal. So I was like, yeah, I can come in the next week. He says, I'll bring a costume. If you fit in the costume, I'll teach you a trick. So I was like, perfect. So I showed up, I fit in the costume. And then I went back maybe like a week later and he brought the trick in. So then he taught me the trick. It was a tip over trunk. And then he had a big event called Mega Magic Saturday, where all of the magicians in and around Alberta were going to be attending. So he said, why don't you come to that and we'll do the trick. And it's being auctioned off. So it'll be how we kick off the auction. So I said, great. So I showed up the day of the event and he said, oh no. And I said, what? And he said, I sold the trick. And I was like, what? So I'm like in my outfit, hair done, makeup done. This is early in the morning. So then he says, you know what? Tell you what, you can stay, you can help with registrations. And you can just hang out for the day. So you'll meet everybody. So I said, great. So I stay, I help with registrations. I meet everybody. I still help with the auction, just not, I don't get to go in that box anymore. But I'm dressed like an assistant. So because I'm dressed like an assistant, all of the guys are asking, oh, are you a magician's assistant? And my answer was, well, not yet, but I'd like to be. So a lot of them, took my info, said, oh, I've got this show coming up where maybe I can put you in the box. So then there was a show called A Brush with Death and they were coming out. So it was like, I think it was their first one, but I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. So Yates Wong was putting on this show called A Brush with Death and Bunny Rabbits, and he had different magicians guest on it. So I got to assist Ryan Pilling for the very first one, going in a sword box. And then another friend, her father, he lived nearby and he was also a magician. So he said, well, like he lived close to my house. He said, why don't you come by and we'll watch magic stuff. So I was like, okay, great. So I would go by, we'd watch magic. We'd drink wine, we'd chat about magic and we'd watch magic. And then he'd say, okay, do you know what you're doing here? And I'd be like, maybe, like we're watching it on TV, whatever. And if I got it right, and if he had the trick, he'd go teach me. And sometimes even if I got it wrong and he had the trick, he'd still go teach me. So we'd like go and play in the garage with like all of these big illusions. So I was like, this is so fun. So I got to learn a lot of different illusions that way. And then I just I took the name The Magic Assistant. I started writing articles for Vanish magazine because there wasn't a lot of stuff on assistants that I could find. Like there's a great book from Jan Jones that's out of print called The Magician's Assistant. That's great. Obviously, Pam Thompson had her lecture notes on assisting, and that's great too. But there wasn't like a whole lot at the time. So Vanish magazine, Paul said, well, do you want to change that? So I was like, yeah. So it was super, super fun. I got to interview a bunch of assistants for different articles for the magazine. So I just got to like grow my network of assistants that way. And they're all so wonderful and so fascinating. So I just thought, it's great. And now, I mean, I count myself so lucky because I do get to know a lot of magicians. Like I go to the conventions, I go, I chat with them in events online sometimes, or just in person. And I like to think I'm pretty friendly. So I think people I think they know that I genuinely love magic and that I'm a genuine person. So when I meet them, I think that all comes through, and that's probably why I've been so lucky to be friends with the people that I'm friends with. But yeah, so there's my very long-winded answer of how I got started.
Some people believe that the magician's assistant is just there to walk around the stage and look like a distraction. What is the assistant's real role in the whole show?
It varies for every show, so I can't give you a definitive answer on that. It really varies on the different show, on what the magician needs, on what your role as an assistant is, because there's multiple different roles for assistants to do. You could be helping on stage, you could be helping off stage, and people might not see you, but you still are there assisting. You could be assisting, not in the show at all. You can be assisting like with other things behind the scenes. So it's just such a big scope of what an assistant can do. I know a lot of times when you're on stage, we can be considered just a pretty face, just a distraction, just a little bit of misdirection. And that definitely is something that assistants can do. They can also be, sometimes they're the ones performing the magic. Like, if you're in a sawing in half, for example, the assistant, there's a lot that we have to do while the magician is outside doing what they have to do. So it's, it's really like a teamwork thing. So there's no definitive answer on what the magician's assistant role is. It's very specific to every show and every trick.
So who have you worked with, and what was it like working with them?
Who I worked with, oh my goodness. Well, I worked with Ryan Pilling. Obviously, he was the very first one to put me in a show. Yates Wong I worked with. Brent Smith, obviously he taught me the first trick that I've ever performed. Sean Farquhar, I was lucky enough to be able to assist him on stage at a gig. So he's just so great. There's been so many, like Ron Saylor. I got to assist him, and then he even put me 10 minutes solo in his show Celebrities of Magic, which is like a competition based show that he puts on in the States in Bakersfield. So he asked if I would come and guest on that. So that was really fun. I work with different guys at conventions for like competitions. I've worked with Lance Burton. Like the list just kind of goes on. We could sit here for a while, but you might not want to do that.
What is your favorite illusion or stage performance to do?
I really like, and I say it in every interview, so I'm sure it's very, very old now, but I like doing the zigzag because your face is out. So because our face is out, I get to see the audience reaction to when I get zagged in half. Now, I can't see what it looks like because obviously I'm in it. So it's like a validation thing for me that I can see that they are wowed And so for me, that's fun, because normally you just hear their reactions because you're inside of a box. And same with like sawing in half, you know, you're like, your face is out. The sword suspension, super fun. I did get to see how it looked once. I mean, you get to see how it looks, obviously, if you've watched magic, but you don't always get to see how you look in it. So when I was rehearsing a sword suspension, we were in a room that was like all mirrors. So I was just looking at the ceiling because I just didn't think about it. And the magician said, well, why don't you just look over and look in the mirror? And then I got to see myself like floating basically on a sword. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, it's so trippy to like see yourself, you know, having it done. So that part's really, really cool. So I do like the zigzag a lot just for that aspect. And I think that it does provide like a great visual for people watching anyways. I also really like origami because I think that it's just beautiful. I can't see myself when I'm in it, but just because you don't ever see my face. But I do like that one.
For those who don't know, what is the zigzag?
The zigzag is a standing up box where a woman goes in, and typically a blade goes through her, I guess, probably right around her chest area. I'm trying to like think for like geographics, and like waist hips area. So a blade goes in both ways. And then that midsection is moved out. Yeah.
Has there ever been a time where something has gone wrong that you've been a part of almost? Or
Oh,
it's almost gone wrong?
definitely. In the sword box, we did different variations of it several times because we did a brush with death. There was several different brush with death variants that happened throughout Calgary. So we tried to make it different every time. So then we had to change like the order of where the swords were going in. So I've been, you know, stabbed with swords. That's fine. And then there was, we were doing the origami, and there's a big mirror that goes on the back of it so that the audience can see it from all sides at all times. And the mirror wasn't there. And so I leaned down as I was standing on this, and it's origami is like on a raised platform. So like stage is here, you get up onto the platform, and then you get into the origami so that it can move because it's on legs.
Mm-hmm.
So I get up and I lean down and I say, we need the mirror. So the magician walks off to get the mirror. Well, my one leg is lifted already to go down into the origami box, but he's now left, and he's my support because you typically hold on to their shoulders when you get up. So I don't have a support to move my leg, because if I move my leg, I'm going to topple because I don't have anything to hold on to. So I just had to stand there on this little, there was probably like a little space for just my 1 foot, and I think I was on my toes to get my leg up and over. You don't want to hit the sides, because with origami, if you hit the sides, they'll probably fall in because you build it. If you've seen it, the sides collapse in and then you get turned into like a little box. So it's great. It's not, it wouldn't have been a problem if I knocked a side down. We could just put it back up, but I didn't want to knock it because then it's just visually, you don't want to knock a side down. So I stood there thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to face plant at any moment while he goes off to get this thing. And the wheels, so because it's on a stand and wheels so that you can turn it later, the wheels weren't locked. So this whole thing is shaking, and I'm shaking, and I'm just standing there smiling, hoping that the mirror shows up. And then the mirror shows up, and I had to like really just engage my core to not fall while he put the mirror on, while I was very not so stably balanced on this thing in front of a big sold out crowd at the Jubilee Auditorium. And so it was just like, just such a ridiculous, I mean, I'll never forget it, that's for sure. and I can laugh about it now. But man, I thought I was gonna face plant. They were gonna need like an ambulance. Like I was gonna give myself a concussion. I was like, oh my gosh, just like, just keep it together. Just stay there. Just smile. Just smile. Just like, don't fall. Just don't fall. So yeah.
With everything that you've learned,
Mhm.
have you ever wanted to do your own show?
So I did 10 minutes of my own show with Celebrities of Magic, and it was great. So I don't know that I would want to do my own full show. I am learning parts, or not parts, but different effects that I can perform solo. So if I was to be in a show with a magician and they needed time to go change or to go, you know, whatever, they might need to go off stage for a couple minutes. I now have different things that I can do, or I've got things that can be integrated into the show where I still need a magician for some of them. Like I can do the gypsy ropes, but I need someone to lift, you need someone to lift the curtain. I can't lift the curtain if I'm already tied up, and you need someone to tie the ropes. So for me, that's still like a magician and an assistant, and I can still play the part of the assistant. It's just something that I can do while they can hold the curtain. They still have to tie me up, so that's fine. I do a Georgia magnet routine that's completely solo. I don't need a magician. When I did it for Celebrities of Magic, I did use a magician, because I came out and I said, listen, I'm known as the magic assistant, so I need to know all kinds of different things. And I said, but because sometimes my job is, dressing pretty and bringing props on stage, I'm going to call on a lovely magician to bring my prop on stage. And it was just a cane. So I could have walked out with it, but instead I had him come and bring me the cane just to have a little bit of humor right at the beginning of my act. And it was great. He was so great. He came out, he curtsied. He was also in the show, in the competition. So I just said, hey, do you want to be my lovely magician? And he was like, yeah. So
Turn
it
the
was great.
tables.
Yeah, we got a great reaction from the audience. They saw him, I think they saw him like earlier in the night, I think he was before me, but I don't remember our order, but I'm pretty sure his was before mine. So I just called him out, and he scampered on with my cane, handed it to me, and then like waved, did a little bow, and off he went. And I was like, see, what a great job. So
What
good.
advice would you give young girls who wanted to get into magic?
Well, I would say, join the IBM, which is the International Brotherhood of Magicians. It's a worldwide network, but they do really great things for the teenagers. So if you're a teenager, they have a free seminar, which is attached to their convention every year. It's the Lance Burton Teen Seminar. So I can say that I definitely have assisted with that. They get some great names, and it's free. It's free for all of the teens. So that's the biggest thing, is they're going to learn so much if they go to that. They can look up their local clubs, see if their city has a local club to learn magic. If they don't, then I would suggest, because of the world of social media now, if they're old enough to get on social media, I'm not suggesting like young, I don't know how young you're asking, but like if they're really young, I'm not suggesting they get on social media, but like find some magic that they like and try to learn that way. See if there's anybody teaching. They could reach out to a club near them and send off an email and say, hey, are any of the magicians teaching one-on-one? Could somebody mentor me? They'll want to find a style that they like so that they know kind of what they want to learn. If they don't know what they want to learn, they can just kind of look at all of the magic. But I mean, when Shin Lim came out on America's Got Talent,
Yeah.
we had the Calgary club. We had a junior club at the time. Right now we don't have a junior club, but we had a junior club at the time, and all the kids wanted to learn. They all just wanted to be Shin Lim. All of them wanted to just be Shin Lim. So they just wanted to do that. They didn't care about learning anything else. Like They don't want to learn things with sponges. They don't want to learn things with this. They don't want to learn things with this. They just want to be Shin Lim, because Shin Lim was like
Yeah.
everything to those kids. So, I mean, you'll want someone that can match that style if there's a certain specific type of magic that you want to learn.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years regarding your magic?
Oh, I see myself still doing what I'm doing, you know, going to conventions. Hopefully I will be doing some more lectures. I've lectured before. I'm trying to do some more lectures on starting social media for magicians, so that, you know, they've got a resource for kind of how to start, what to maybe post, how to find their niche, how to, you know, how to get more engagement online, that kind of stuff. And consulting for, you know, shows, because I'm a magician's assistant. I've got a pretty good eye for detail. I came from a marketing background, so my attention to detail is pretty good. So I can see things that maybe layman might not notice, or maybe another magician might not notice or might not tell you. So I've told people before, you know, a good friend, and he showed me a trick one day in at a convention in Vegas, and he really wanted to show me this trick. And so he shows me the trick, and he says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "No, it's great. It's a great trick." And he's like, "Okay, but what, like your face says that something's off." And I was like, "Yeah, when you produce the card at the end, it's upside down." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Your card's upside down." He says, "No, it's not." I said, "Yes, it is." I said, "If you had it this way before, it should come out this way again." And he says, "What?" So he goes back up to his room, he does it in front of the mirror, comes back to me the next day, says, "You're absolutely right." He says, "I have showed so many people at this convention, so many friends, so many magicians. I showed so many people." And he's like, "And you are the first one to notice that I should be flipping it the other way." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How?" And I said, "Because I noticed the smaller details that people might not notice, because I'm not as focused on learning or watching to be like, okay, how did he do that? I'm not watching to be like, okay, how did he do that? How can I maybe take it and turn it and make it better?" Like if I'm a magician, maybe I'm trying to like steal his move, or like be like, "Oh, you could do the move this way," or "I've got this handling." I don't have any of that. I'm just watching it from a purely like enjoyment factor, but I'm also watching it to be like, okay, well, you flashed here. You flashed here. I can see your steal here, if that's the case. Or in that case, you had the card facing this way before, and then when you produced it again, it wasn't facing that way. And he'd done that trick so many times. And he's like, "You are absolutely right." So then he had just had to change like his whole handling with it, which of course, not knowing how that handling worked, I wouldn't know how much he's got to change. I just say, "That's wrong." So now he does it, you know, the way that where it makes more sense in my brain, that it comes out the right way. And he's like, "It's so much smarter," because he says it's so much cleaner now. And he's like, "And I thought it was pretty good before, but now it's like elevated." So I'm happy to do, you know, consulting and stuff. So hopefully in 5 years, I'll be doing more of that, because I do love to watch it. I love to watch it all.
You've met Johnny and Pam Thompson. What was that like for you?
I sure have. They are, I miss them. Like I just miss them so much. They're so great. They were so great. So lovely. So wonderful. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. I got to, when I was doing interviews for Vanish, it was set up that I could interview Pam, which was amazing, because I was so thrilled to be able to interview Pam. The saddest part is we had recorded it on my phone, but it didn't save. There was like a glitch or something. So I never got to, I know. It broke my heart. And I didn't know till, you know, after we'd already done the whole thing, and it was like hours that we like spent together. So they were retiring their act at a Magic Live in Las Vegas, and I got to sit in the green room with them for a couple hours before the show, and hang out and help feed the dog and watch them get ready and just interview them both, basically. And it was just supposed to be an interview of Pam, but like Johnny would like interject with like memories and things that he remembered, and it was just, I don't have words for it. Like, to think about it, I just think, how did I get to do that? Like, I'm just a girl from Calgary that loves magic, and I got to go to Vegas, and I got to sit in the room with Pam and Johnny and watch them get ready. And there's no, I got to ask them like anything under the sun and just hang out. So I just feel so incredibly lucky. And I don't have words for how wonderful it was, but they were just wonderful, wonderful people. I have a picture of the two of them framed. It's up in all my houses. So I don't have a lot of houses. It's just I moved. So like, it was up in my other house. Now it's in this house.
You've written for Vanish magazine a few times. What was that like for you?
It was super fun. It was, it was great I like biographies already. I like to read biographies. So to get to ask different assistants, like how they got started and get to meet them. And then when I got to meet them in person, because a lot of them, I just would interview, online. I'd find them on Instagram, or I'd interview one and then they'd say, oh, you should talk to this girl. Okay, great. Get me in touch. Oh, you should talk to this person. Great. Sounds wonderful. I got to interview Joelle, which is one of Lance Burton's assistants, because I tweeted him and I said, hey, I'd like to interview one of the Burton babes if I could. And he said, well, do you want to talk to me? And I said, no, I want to talk to them. So he said, okay. So he got me in touch. And then they were at that same convention in Vegas. I don't know if it was the same year. I think it might have been. That was a really good year for me if it was. So a friend of mine said, oh, do you want to go? He knew that I'd interviewed the one assistant. So he said, come with me. I'll show you where their green room is. And I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. So I go off, and Lance was leaving. So he comes out into the hallway and he's like, oh, Gwen's here. So he gives me a hug and he's like, hey, do you want to meet Joelle? And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm kind of like lurking where I shouldn't be. And he's like, oh, just come in. So he opens the door and he's like, Joelle, Gwen's here. And then she's like, oh, so then I got to meet all of them. And I was just like, this is amazing. And I think when I met them, they were actually in the little flight attendant outfits. Well, they were all getting changed out of them, but I think that's what they wore on stage that night, which is funny because at the last Magic Live, they had a costume party event. And I said, well, I don't want to bring a costume. So I called Lance before I came down. And I said, hey, can I borrow a costume? So he says, yeah, sure. So I said, great. So I got to wear one of the flight attendant costumes, which I thought was just hilarious. Like, I tried a few on, and so we picked the one that like fit me the best, which was the US one. And I was like, there needs to be like a Canadian one. But yeah, so I walked around the convention for that first costume party as a Burton babe, and Stan Allen was dressed as Lance Burton, so he'd borrowed stuff from Lance as well. So yeah, so we had a good laugh.
You wrote a book called How to Be a Wizard of Odd. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I wrote a little book for like back of room sales, because I think that's always something that you should have, that's like, something small that you can kind of promote yourself, kind of have in your back pocket if you're going to shows, have something with like your face, your contact info, something so people can remember you, something that if someone is on stage with you helping, you've got something to give them after, and then maybe they'll come and they want an autograph, because after shows, all of that stuff is important for your brand and for people to remember the show. So I love Wizard of Oz so much. So I thought, oh, well, I'll make the name of it How to Be a Wizard of Odd. So I Googled, and there was already a guy, I believe his real name was Greg, and he was the Wizard of Odd. That was his stage name, and he was a magician. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, do you mind if I take this name for this book? And he said, no, I don't use it anymore, no problem. I said, great. And then people actually came at me when I put it up and said, hey, I've like made this thing. And they said, oh, there's already a Wizard of Oz. And I said, oh, I know. He's lovely. I reached out to him and asked if I could use this in the title of my, back of room sales book. And so they said, oh, okay. Because oftentimes, people won't ask, but I was like, no, like, I'm going to ask. Now that I found out that somebody has this, I'm going to ask if it's okay before I just do it. Even though I know ask for forgiveness, blah, 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 but I just thought, well, I'll just reach out because the magic community is big, but it's also so small, so everybody's like, it just kind of turns into like one big family. So I just thought if I ever meet him, like, I don't want there to be any animosity. If he's like, oh my gosh, this girl from Canada, she took this thing, like, it's a backroom sales book. It's not going to go all over, like, it's not in bookstores. It's not anything like that. But I just thought I should still ask. So I did. And he's great. So it was good.
Other than magic, in 2007, you climbed the Great Wall of China. What made you decide to do that, and what was it like doing that?
Oh, I did. So I was in cooking school, is what I'd taken in school. And I went for my graduation trip. I went to China. My cousin was teaching English over there. She was in Shanghai. So I went to stay with her for a couple weeks. And while I was there, it was during Chinese New Year. So I almost didn't climb the Great Wall because I wanted to go to the Hainan Islands and she wanted to go to the Hainan Islands. So they're still on my bucket list. I still want to go to the Hainan Islands. But because it was Chinese New Year, everyone was going to the Hainan Islands because they all had this time off. So we looked for a flight to Beijing because she's like, well, we can go to Beijing. So I'm like, okay. So we look for a flight to Beijing. We go to the airport the day of. Well, in China, you may not get on your flight if you've got a flight that day, because if the weather's no good, you're not going. So we get to the airport, weather's no good, no flights today, go back home. So my mind is now blown because I'm like, what do you mean no flights today? Like, I get that it's like windy, but like no flights at all today? Like they're just gonna say, nope, done? And she's like, yeah, tomorrow. So I was like, okay. So we go back the next day, get on the plane, go off to Beijing. And so she's like, oh, well, while you're here, you should climb the Great Wall of China. And I was like, sure, sounds awesome. So I did climb part of the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall of China has multiple entrance points where, like, tourist points where you can go on and climb it. The one that I went to, so we'd signed up for like a tour. So the one that we went to, you actually got shuttled like halfway up on what I call like a roller coaster, but not. It looked like a roller coaster, but it went very slowly and they kind of strapped you in. And then, so you were sitting and then you went, oop. So you just kind of looked up as you like went up. So you were kind of like on your back. These things just kind of tilted and up you went. So you went like about, I don't know, halfway or something. Like you got part of the way up. And then once you got there, then you could climb along and climb up to like the top point of that section. So I climbed to the top point of that section. It was definitely steep, definitely uneven in parts, and but such an amazing thing to see. Like just completely, it's just so big. Like it's ridiculous. It's so beautiful. So I would definitely go do it again, even if I had to ride that little thingy again to go back up. That was fine. You got part way, and to be fair, that was probably very helpful because it's a grind to get up parts of it because it's really, really steep in spots. So yeah.
Did you find the spot where David Copperfield did his major trick through the wall?
I don't think I did. I don't know. But I don't think that I did.
So you said you were taking cooking school at the time. What was that like?
Yeah, so I went to SAIT, which is a school here in Calgary, and I took the Culinary Arts program. It was great. It was super fun. I don't enjoy working in a kitchen environment, as I learned. Like I like cooking. I like baking. I really like to make cupcakes, cakes. I like to decorate things with icing. Um, but yeah, it was a really great program. Really, really great. You learn a lot of skills. But afterwards, I just decided that like working as a chef in a kitchen maybe wasn't for me.
So you're also a model and a dancer. What was that like? What's that like for you?
Well, for modeling, I mean, you just, if people want to take my picture, fine. Yeah, I guess it was about the same. I mean, it's still kind of performing. It's just performing in a different way.
You've also done some acting. What was that like as well?
Yeah, I have. I've been an extra on different sets. I've been in plays. I've been in some musicals. I did musical theater as a kid. I did choir as well as a kid and singing lessons. So if you're watching different shows, there's a lot that gets filmed out here in Calgary. So you might see me pop up as like an extra. I know people have spotted me in Fargo, which is very impressive because that one, if you blink, you'll definitely miss me. I've been spotted in Heartland. I'm in Winona Earp. I'm in different movies. So it's again, it's just more performing. It's just a different avenue. You can't always, I mean, for me, because I have a day job, I can't always be on stage all the time. So yeah, just another fun way to get your creative outlet and still keep performing in a
Does that
different
help?
set.
Does that help a little bit with the the stage stuff as well? Like goes like shows you how to do this, and then you can transfer it over to the stage performance.
I think it doesn't hurt. I think like improv, if you're going to do anything on stage, you'll want to take some improv. Personally, I do not think that I excel at improv. But I mean, it's still tools that you should know. So just because I don't want to go and perform improv like every week, I still can admire the art. I still think that it's great. And I think that it's so useful for any performer to have under their belt some improv skills. So I would say that that's definitely helpful. That's going to be more helpful than maybe acting skills, because if you're going to be on stage as a magician, you don't know who's going to be coming up as your audience volunteer. So you'll want more improv because you never know what they're going to say. Like right now, because I'm not doing any magic, I'm an aunt to a beautiful niece and a wonderful nephew, and I love them both, but they're kids. So it's like improv every day, man, when I have them on the phone, because you never know what they're going to say. Like, I don't know where they come up with this stuff. And you just have to like answer on the fly. So, I mean, if you don't have kids and you're going into magic, probably want some improv. If you've got small kids, you might be okay because you're used to like random stuff that they say or that they ask. Yep. But yeah.
And finally, where can people find you online, and what future projects do you have coming up?
Oh, they can find me anywhere at Magic Assistant. So my name on just about every channel is Magic Assistant. If it's not Magic Assistant, it's a version of Magic Assistant. Like for TikTok, I think I might have to be Magic_Assistant because somebody took it. But yeah, at Magic Assistant is basically everywhere, and they can watch for some social media tips coming up and some different brand partnerships that I'm excited to start working with.
Well, thank you very much, Gwen, for being on this episode of Let's Chat With today.
Thank you so much for having me.